Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my product chat series. Today, our guest is Ketaki, who is the product manager within AI space at Oracle. She has moved from engineering to product management. I'm so excited to speak with her today. Hi, Ketaki. How are you today?
Hey Rufeda, it's a pleasure to be here, and it's a fall evening and I was feeling very depressed, so I'm
Oh,
glad that we can talk about product management in the evening and add some meaning to it.
yeah, for sure. I'll try that I make it as exciting as possible so you get out of that phase.
Sure.
So how about we start with your journey, starting from like your educational background and how did you even get to know about product management?
Sure. Yeah, that's a long journey, but I did my bachelor's in computer science and engineering from NIT Silchar, which is in Assam in India. And I completed that in 2017. And after that, I joined Oracle Hospitality as a part of the offers that we got from our campus.
Mhm.
So when I joined Oracle Hospitality, I began as an associate software engineer. We worked on we had a core product for hotel operations and distribution, and I worked on it. There are multiple modules within it. So I started as an associate software engineer, worked my way up to a senior software engineer and an engineering lead. But at that point, I started questioning if this is something that I wanted to do for life. And that was the time around which I was listening to a lot of podcasts and people were talking a lot about product management. So what I liked about my job was that I liked coding and I liked the fact that we were making an impact and we were changing lives at some point of the software life cycle by implementing the features. But we still had a very restricted view on why we are doing what we're doing. And I wanted to go behind the why, and I wanted to be in a position where I could drive the product strategy. So that is when I got interested in product management. And then it's a long story, but I talked to my manager, worked a few things up, and then applied for masters in the US. So I was going to come as a master student to the US, learn about product management, and then get into the job industry. But my company had an open position in California for an AI product manager. So things seemed to align and they transferred me to the US. So I changed countries, I changed roles. But once began as a product manager, I really started liking the role because it better suited my personality
Yeah.
and I could be 100% dedicated to what I was doing every day.
Yeah, that is a very great opportunity. Like you thought about doing masters and then now you're here. So
Yeah.
very exciting opportunity. Um, so basically what does your day-to-day look like? I'm sure it would be different than engineering. So what
Mhm.
does it look like for product managers?
So I think as product managers, no 2 days look the same, as you said. But so what I do is I try to categorize the different tasks that I have based on the days. So on Mondays, I usually do a lot of writing design documents, and this is where we have to research thoroughly on what do our customers want, what are the pain points that they are currently facing, can we optimize the current workflows, and then after that research based on the data that you have, you write a design document where you're enlisting the requirements for the engineers. So that is what I do on Mondays. And then Tuesdays is more about all my meetings. I jam it on Tuesdays. So it's more
Oh,
about planning meeting and collaborating with UI UX to understand how can the mockups be developed for a particular functionality, and then collaborating with QA to understand if their test cases are aligned with what we have to test in the product and how thorough we want to get, and then talking to engineers if they have any queries. And again, these meetings can happen every day, but we try to do most of our team meetings on Tuesday so that other days can be focusing on the deep work that everyone has to do in their role. And then Wednesdays and Thursdays, it's usually about continuing with the design documents and also collecting a lot of data about how our customers are liking our product. Maybe we research on the data and find some anomalies, we find some outliers and see this is not going right. We should further research on what's going wrong here, and maybe we have a scope of improvement and that. And then Friday is usually we keep it very flexible because Fridays most of the people are in a zone to shut down for the weekend. And so there's nothing major happening on Fridays, but it's usually just planning for the next week and ensuring that our product goals, all the Jira tickets, and all the epics and stories, all of those are aligned for the team. And then we follow an agile cycle where we implement features every 2 weeks.
Okay.
So it takes the team a while to get into that velocity where they can work well with each other and also be able to deliver the work that they had committed to.
That's interesting because I have heard so many like different day to day wise. Even when I was working as a product manager, I had completely different situations. So it's very good to, see like different schedules out there.
Yeah, I think product management is a profession where you can't define it by the book, and every product manager, depending on the space that they are in, depending on the industry that they are in, their role and their day-to-day responsibilities is going to differ a lot.
Yeah,
And so there's no way to generalize or even learn it through a degree.
right. Yeah. What do you think are what's the most, I would say, exciting thing that you like about product management?
I think some one thing that I missed as an engineer was meetings because I like the opportunity to get into a room, especially when we used to have in-person office and now everything's remote in our company. But when we used to have these in-person interactions and we used to brainstorm on different ideas for the product, and this is a feature that we could work on. This is where we could impact our customers. This is where we could maybe go and win over our competitors. So all those kind of interactions, I didn't get much of that as an engineer, but now I get to do a lot of customer demos. I get to do a lot of these brainstorming meetings, and that's the most exciting part about getting to drive what the next product decision is going to be.
I like that. Also, how's it different? Like, I know you are working within the AI space. How's it?
So I feel when I started, I was also trying to figure out what an AI product manager exactly does, because again, not only does product management differ, but even an AI product manager differs on what they would do in a company depending on how big the organization is and how big the team is.
Yeah.
But as an AI product manager, what's even more difficult with your job is there's a lot of uncertainty and you're dealing with ambiguity every day.
Right.
So in this case, when you write a design document, nothing is set in stone
Right.
because you are giving a set of guidelines to the engineers and the data scientists, and you're saying this is how I want the product to look like. But as you go, you discover a lot of new surprises every day, and then you have to go back and keep editing and changing the requirements based on what the data is saying, based on what the data scientists discover or what the engineers find out. So it's more of running these minimum viable products and running a lot of POCs to just test your hypothesis. And then based on that, you come up with a feature that might or might not work. But you again collect data to see if customers are liking it. And so it's this continuous cycle of dealing with uncertainty. And sometimes it's very people struggle with it and the team gets demotivated. So an additional challenge here is to keep your team aligned and motivated all the time, because they might feel like we are not making an impact. They might feel like the features are not going to the customer as soon as we would like. But the AI product management space is very different than the normal product management space.
For sure. How do you think? I know right now everyone wants to learn more about the AI space. How do you think is the, I know if they cannot go for like on the job training, what's the other best way to learn?
So I think when we look at an AI product manager, you definitely have to be a good product manager first. So all the prerequisites for preparing for a product manager interview, which is being good with the estimation questions and a lot of these behavioral interview questions, or being able to talk about your product and understanding the business side of things, that's very important. So that still remains as a prerequisite. But in addition to that, you have to understand how do you do A/B testing differently when you're dealing with these complex data sets, or how do you have to understand the basic ML algorithms. You have to understand the basic techniques out there, because when you're working with data scientists, one challenge is the data scientists sometimes they get too focused on the mathematics part, and you have to bring them back to saying, hey, this is going to work for the product. We can't focus so much on the mathematics. I know this is your job, but come back and see what the product needs and then do this. So that way you have to bring the data scientists back on track. Sometimes they may deviate, they start researching something that does not add a lot of value to the product. So you have to be very well versed, not maybe as deep as an engineer would go, but you have to have a very holistic understanding of the different ML algorithms out there, so that you can speak in a language the data scientists can understand, and you can also understand when they are facing any challenges.
Yeah, makes sense. So, in terms of like just like machine learning and artificial intelligence, do you think any certification or any course covers that part?
So I don't think a course or a certification is necessary. I know that there are a lot of courses
Yeah.
coming up, and there's so much around. But if we are diligent enough to follow the latest research trends
Yeah.
in the field of artificial intelligence, this can just be done by going to maybe ResearchGate, Google Scholar, IEEE, and all of these journals, and you try to figure out what are the latest papers that they are releasing in the artificial intelligence domain, and just looking at AI as a tool to solve business problems. So sometimes, as an AI product manager, you might or might not use AI
Hmm.
for the particular use case. And so you just have to understand what is out there, what are the different techniques that I can use, which might enhance the user experience. So it's very important to have user as your source of truth,
Hmm.
because sometimes we get so focused on adding AI to the product and making it so enticing for the users, but it might not solve the actual problem.
Right.
So you have to be very careful about whether first do we want to use AI, and if we want to use AI, is it really adding value to the user? So once we approach the problem with that perspective, it's easier to look at a problem that's actually a problem for the customers and then solve it, and ensure that, because whenever we use AI, customers have seen that they get very intimidated and they sometimes don't trust the systems. So it's also important to have humans in the loop in your design, and that way your customers can have complete visibility of what is AI doing, and if AI goes wrong, there's someone to take care of that.
Interesting. That's very good to hear. It's like I have always wanted to, learn more about AI, and just hearing from you makes me more aware of that. So thank you for sharing that. Um, Coming back to product management side, what do you think are the top three skills that you think are very important for anyone who wants to get into product management?
So I think the first skill would obviously be communication, because as a product manager, the entire influence that you have, and you have to influence without authority, but the entire influence that you have on your stakeholders, on your executives, on your team members, it all comes down to how well you can communicate. And a lot of times you'll have to say no to some ideas. A lot of times you'll have to be very assertive about why we want this deadline for a particular feature. So it comes down to the ability of being very empathetic to others, but at the same time articulating in a way that people can understand. So you speak differently to executives, but you speak differently to your team members.
Mhm.
And so the level of detail there, depending on who you're speaking to, makes a lot of difference, because your perception as a product manager is going to get you far.
Yeah.
And if people like you, they'll listen to you, and it's easier to then get things done, which is where the execution part would come in. The second skill I would say is being very strategic.
Mhm.
So let's say, as of now, I'm working on a particular feature. I also have to think about what is happening to this feature 6 months down the line, and how is this feature impacting everything else that we have.
Right.
So just having this farsightedness in terms of what are we currently working on? Is this really benefiting the business? And if so, how is it going to change our roadmap going ahead? So that thinking, which comes with practice, but you always have to be thinking from that lens.
Right.
And the third I would say is being analytical, because a lot of times you can't take the decisions based on your gut feeling. You have to take the decisions based on the data that's available. You might or might not have access to the data, but there are still certain estimations that can be done, or some techniques that can be used in order to ensure that you're making an estimated guess. So always being very analytical about every decision that you're taking, because that makes everything that you say more persuasive, and people then believe in your product.
I love that. So the first point that you mentioned about that was communication.
Mhm.
You mentioned about lead without authority. How do you do
Yeah.
that?
Yes, I'm still learning to do that. I don't know if anyone has figured that out. But to influence without authorities, where you have to understand that as a product manager, when you begin in this field, you're not a people manager, right? And people have their different managers, and they are, especially when you're dealing with a global cross-functional team, you are dealing with different people who have different areas of expertise, and now you have to customize everything that you say in a way that they understand, but at the same time they feel supported. So one common mistake that I did, when I was coming from the engineering background, coming as a product manager now, and then I would try to interrupt everything that the engineers were doing because I thought I knew better, and I thought I could understand what their technical designs were. So I would try and interrupt, and I would say, hey, why are you saying that this will take 2 weeks? Maybe we can do it in 1 week.
Yeah.
I know I've done this as an engineer. And then that brought along a lot of mistrust within the team because they felt like I was getting in their role, or I was getting in the way of their work.
Mm.
So you have to be very careful about not crossing that line where you let everyone know what is good for the product
Yeah.
and why we are doing what we're doing. It obviously has to be backed by data so that people believe you. But at the same time, you let them do what they want. You give them that box, or you give them that flexibility within which they can take their own decisions, and then they'll be more motivated to support you in your goal. Because
Yeah.
as a product manager, your success comes down to how well all the other roles are working
Yeah.
in. And so, if you are giving people an environment where they feel supported, they feel valued, they are going to better do their work, and they are also going to respect you as a person. And that's a very crucial aspect to building a high performing team.
Completely understandable, because I think no one, like even us, we don't want anyone to tell us, okay, this is how we want things to
Yeah.
be done. So yeah, that makes sense. In terms of if you have interviewed anyone in the past for product management positions, what
Mhm.
skills do you look for? Because I know like communication, looking at like strategically, it's very difficult to see that during the interviews. Uh,
Mhm.
what do you try to look for when you're interviewing someone?
So, a few aspects. I haven't interviewed for product manager positions, but I've seen a lot of these mock interviews and I've done a lot of them. So, based on that, what I've discovered is they typically give you a lot of behavioral questions. And that becomes a very important aspect for product management interviews because it's about how are you talking about the past work that you've done. So maybe you weren't a product manager before, but there are still certain transferable skills that you can bring from your previous role to this role. And people try to understand how you're articulating those experiences and what have you learned from them. And the main quality that they're looking for here is, are you being analytical? Do you have the basics of maybe working with data, working with the product? And depending on that domain, they may test you further on that. But in general, in terms of the work ethics, in terms of the qualities, they look for how well you can answer the question. And when they give you a product case study, how critically do you think about a product? Do you always have this product hat on?
Right.
And think about, oh, I like this feature about this product, oh, this is something that they could have done better. And once you start thinking like that, and once you start answering like that,
Mhm.
it becomes very evident to the interviewer that this is a person who is passionate about the field. You really need to be passionate as a product manager because the work can get mundane after a point.
I
And so you have to project and reveal that passion during the interview, which is something that would make you stand out as a candidate.
I love that. Uh, so this is interview. How about in a resume? What do you think a product manager or an aspiring product manager should have on their resume?
So first is, whenever you're looking at your resume, you have to make it ATS friendly
Yeah.
because your resume is not being reviewed by a human. It's being reviewed by a machine first, and then it goes to the human. So you have to have the format and template in such a way that you keep it simple, but it also can have those major keywords that a product manager's position needs so that you get the interview call. And in the resume, as I said, if you are breaking into product from a non-product background, it does not have to be technical, it can be any background, but you still have to think about what was the work that you did and how is it relevant to the product management position. So just to take an example, let's say you're coming from psychology, you
Yeah.
can talk about, you can relate psychology to the user psychology that can be used. It's a very good skill to have,
Yeah.
knowing the basic concepts of psychology and then using that to better design the product. So you can talk about it in a way where you showcase the impact that you delivered in terms of numbers. So let's say a change that I made decrease the number of clicks in the product by 30%, or maybe a change that I made increase the revenue by 30% or whatever. So those kind of impactful points where you can quantify the impact that your work made,
Yeah.
that has to be on the resume. And then if you've been a product manager before, you clearly talk about what was the stage of the product, how big was the organization. Because when I say I worked on a 0 to 1 product, its perspective is very different in a big organization versus in a startup.
Right.
So depending on the number of employees, depending on your impact of the product, depending on the reach of your product, it can differ.
Yeah.
So you have to really quantify the impact and go to that level of detail where you're giving them a holistic picture about this is what I did and this is how it's relevant to the job that I'm applying. I would also recommend customizing your resume depending on the role that you're applying for. So let's say you're applying for Oracle Hospitality, you have to talk about hospitality in some way, or you have to really peek into your past experience and see if there's something that can be related to hospitality. And then research about what the role wants, research about the job description, and then curtail your resume based on that. If you're applying for Amazon, the process might be different. So depending on the organization that you're applying for, you have to customize your cover letter, you have to customize your resume. And I know that people usually try to slack for that last part because they send the same resume everywhere. But if you make those 2 to 3 minor changes just to make it more evident to the other person who's reading your resume that you've really put in the effort, then you stand out as a candidate.
I like that. Yeah, I think if you just like send the same resume everywhere, there's nothing like anything new. Everyone has like a same format, I think. Most of
Mhm.
the people who have like recently updated their resume, most of them have the same format. I think one thing that could set you apart would be, making those changes. So
And
definitely,
I think you've also talked about it on your LinkedIn posts. I read a few of them, and you've talked about this. You're very vocal about how to get product management interviews because this is the toughest part, I feel, in the interview, just getting the interview. You don't get product management interview calls very easily because there's one product managers to 7 engineers maybe in the team, which is the usual ratio.
very true.
So it's very competitive.
Uh, Especially right now, like I have seen a lot of people want to get into product management, and it's been like so much more competitive. Uh,
Hmm.
Okay, that's a hard one.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think, if someone wants to get into product management with a non-technical background, what are some ways to get into product management? I know we discussed about transferable skills. What other ways could be there?
So if you are transferring to a product manager role from a non-technical background, it all comes down to how well you are able to project your past experience which and make it relevant to product management. So for that, what you'll have to do is you'll first have to understand what this role actually is, because a lot of people think that they know what product management is, but then you can't learn enough. And so you have to talk to at least maybe 20, 25 product managers.
Okay.
It's very easy to do that. You go to LinkedIn, you send personalized invites to people, and you're just curious about the role that they have and see if you're really interested in it, because there are different types of product management. You have to figure out which one you like. There is technical, there is non-technical. There are so many aspects to the product manager role that you have to first figure out which part of the software lifecycle you have to be on.
Yeah.
So you talk to multiple product managers and try to understand what is the language that they speak, because when you move on from some other role to the product management role, you have to speak a different language. You have to speak about metrics, you have to speak about prioritization, road mapping, feature, and the more people you talk to, the more normalized it becomes in your head to be able to talk like that and to show someone that you do have what it takes. And the third tip that I would give is just building product sense, which can be done by observing products around you, reading a lot of case studies, listening to a lot of podcasts on building product sense. And then that gives you a good edge about answering questions in a certain way when
Mm.
they are asked during the interview. So there's nothing to fear about when you're breaking from a non-technical background, because I've seen this myth that a lot of people think that it's important to have a technical background to get into product management, but it's really not. You bring your own unique perspective from the previous role that you're coming in, and you just have to carry it forward in a way that it can that it can show the other person that you will be a good product manager in the future. And all the training and all the techniques that you have to learn can be learned on the job, but you just have to show the potential,
Yeah,
and that happens by a lot of conversations and preparation.
it's about how you portray it at the end of the day, even if you
About
don't,
your story.
yeah, at the end of the day, even if you don't know anything about it, the way you portray it, I think that changes everything.
Yeah, that's true.
In terms of any, if you have any suggestions on any books, I know that product management cannot be learned through books or anything like that. Anything that you feel like, for example, we just spoke about data. So any courses, certifications that you would highly recommend to any aspiring product managers?
So I would recommend subscribing to a lot of newsletters for people who are writing about the latest trends in this area, because it's not always easy to stay abreast with all the research papers that people are writing, and so many research papers are being added every day. But what you can do is just subscribe to these newsletters. So there is Marilyn Nika. She works in the AI product management space, and she writes a lot about what are the latest AI product manager jobs, what are the latest trends. So I follow her and learn a lot about AI. I listen to the Product School podcasts, which gives me a very good understanding about what are the different product managers across different organizations doing, how do they interview people, and what do they look for, and how do they progress their career. Because that's another aspect. Once you become a product manager, you don't understand how to navigate the journey and succeed in your job. So you always have to listen to different perspectives. And then I would also recommend following online blogs like Mind the Product, and there are several others. I can give you the links to that and you can attach it in the description. But following those, reading those blogs, and getting into this habit of or every day starting or maybe ending your workday with these research trends and technology trends to understand what you can pitch for the next feature of your product.
I
So
love,
that helps.
yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Just last two questions. I know that you're very active on LinkedIn, and you post really good content. What do you think? How much power there is for networking out there when it comes to jobs?
I think networking is the only way to get jobs these days, because there is so much competition and the economy currently is not in a very good situation. So the only way that you can make it work and the only way that you can stand out is by talking about what you know. And everyone's doing that. A lot of people are now doing that very actively. So
Yeah.
it's very easy to just look at them, be inspired, and start writing. So I would say that maybe you don't write on an everyday basis if you don't have the time, but whenever you're learning something new, let's say you're beginning your product management interview prep journey, and so every day that you learn something new, you just post about it. And if you make that habit of sharing what you know, it also becomes easy to reinforce it to your brain and understand this is what I've learned. But at the same time, it shows recruiters and all the potential hiring managers over there that this is a person who is really putting in an effort
Yeah.
to shine and to learn about the product management field. So you have to be very excited and curious, but at the same time you have to be vocal and write about it. If not, if writing on LinkedIn is intimidating to some people, you can write on Medium, but you just have to keep writing it somewhere and show people that you're learning continuously, and sharing that progress. It ensures that people are really invested in you and they start then believing in you, so it builds your credibility.
Love that. Just one last thing. What advice would you have for aspiring product managers or anyone who wants to transition into the field?
So I would say the one advice that I would have is, first of all, join product management for the right reasons. Because a lot of people that I've talked to, when I ask them why they want to get into product management, they say it's because they hate coding, or maybe it's because product management is the next big thing. And if you join this profession for those reasons, it's not going to be very sustainable, because eventually it gets really hard. You're supposed to make all the decisions, you're supposed to take accountability, take all the blame. And so if you're not really passionate about what this field has to offer and the intricacies about that field, then you're not going to sustain longer, or you're not going to thrive in it. So join product management for the right reasons and really understand what product management has to offer. So talk to as many people as you can. That not only helps to build product sense, but it also helps to get a general awareness of what are the different career paths that you can take even within the product management field. And making that decision for yourself right at the very beginning of breaking into product is very essential, because once you get in, it's difficult to switch tracks.
Right.
So just to have that understanding and approach it wisely, that's what I would say.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think this was very helpful for me as well. So thank you so, so much for being here. This was very insightful.
Thank you. It was great being here, and I'll share all the links with you for the different newsletters and everyone can follow in the AI product management space.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
No worries.